So, let's talk a bit about the angry video game nerd.
He's gonna take you back to the past to play the shitty games that suck ass. He'd rather.
Now, I think it's safe to say at this point that just about everyone who knows who the angry video game nerd is, or at the very least is familiar with this character. But for those who don't know, here's a quick explanation. The angry video game nerd is a character that was created by James Rolfe and Mike Matei, the former of whom plays the titular nerd character. While it's hard to say if this was the first true web series or not, the Angry Video Game Nerd is at the very least the most well-known web series of the early internet, as well as one of the most influential. For many people both back then and now, the series was their first exposure to online content creation for the web. At a time when making content for the web was still fairly new, it was rare you got a series like this that was pretty high quality for the time. James and Mike were pioneers in online creation, as the pair basically invented the concept of video reviews, with James making a 2004 video of him reviewing the game Simon's Quest for the NES, which he hooked up to his VCR, something James did often growing up. Needless to say, it's common now for people to just casually make a video like this where they cover a game they wanted to talk about and go indefinite or just make a more comedic approach. But at a time when this was unheard of, James unintentionally invented a new video genre, one that was pretty figured out. Like, when watching, you think James had made this video with the intention of it taking off, but in reality, he made the video as a joke that took off in a way he never anticipated. Suddenly, everyone wanted to join in on this idea, and the angry video game nerd was a forefather in online content creation who influenced most of today's most beloved creators. We owe a lot to James and especially Mike, who encouraged James to further push his character into the public zeitgeist. It was all thanks to this show that we're at the point we are now. And like I said, most people in content creation are likely familiar with this character already and his impact on the platform. But in more recent memory, the current state of the show, and the Cinemassacre brand as a whole, isn't always seen in the best light. With the show being shown in a more controversial light nowadays for many reasons, I won't be going into a whole lot of it, considering that there's a lot to go over in that regard. And there's plenty of great videos out there that better explain most of this stuff anyway, so definitely check those out. I won't leave you guys completely in the dark or anything, and we'll discuss a bit of that behind the scenes stuff as we go along, but in this series, that's not really the main focus or the main subject I want to cover. So let's just get into how we're going to do this. For the longest time, I've been wanting to do a retrospective of the AVGN series, give my thoughts on the show and its current state. I have quite a bit I want to say on the show and everything surrounding it, and I know I'm definitely not the first person to do this, but whatever. Again, I definitely recommend you watch some of these other channels as they explain a lot of this way better than I could, but I still want to give my 2 cents as a longtime fan of AVGN. I'm going to be doing an LS Mark style ranking and rank every episode of AVGN. I'm sure most of you are familiar with how this format works, but to give you an idea for those unaware, I'm going to rank every episode from each season in separate videos. I'm going to start with Season 1 and go all the way to the current season. By the end of this, we're going to rank every episode from the entire series from worst to best. We've got a long way to go before we get to that point, however, so I think it's best we just jump right into the review. This is every AVGN episode ranked from worst to best.
Video game nerd.
This game sucks. Castlevania 1 and 3 are great classic Nintendo games, but for Castlevania 2, Simon's Quest, the game designers obviously were not thinking straight.
Well, here we are, the review that started it all. For a piece of internet history, it's interesting to think that this piece is so readily available online. You know, for many people, this is more or less a standard fare comedic game review here on YouTube. But when you look at the bigger picture, this is the video that more or less created a genre. Multiple genres when you think about it, from the angry gamer archetype, the retro game review, video essay, and so much more. It may seem weird to attribute all of it to James Rolfe, and don't get me wrong, there were plenty of other pieces of media before this video that were similar to it and derivative of it. But it's wild to me just to see how much content was derivative of this one video alone, this one included. At least the other videos that followed it as well, but this is the one that started it all. An angry nerd playing old shitty games that no one else really cares about anymore. We'll see more about this aspect of the character within the next few episodes, but for now, the nerd himself is just a guy who likes to rant about these forgotten relics. Here he covers a game that he is usually celebrated by many fans of retro gaming, that being the second Castlevania game, Simon's Quest. The nerd rants for a little bit about the disappointment he felt playing the game, a game that should have been awesome, only to be greeted with a really bland experience that's annoying, cryptic, and all in all just an inferior game to the first. I guess it's kind of fitting for the nerd's first review to be a game in a franchise he really likes. One that truly infuriated him for having such high expectations for this game, only for it to fail to deliver. I like that approach since it seems more personal in that regard, which was always what the nerd was all about. It was about the personal scars and experience that these games left behind for him. I think that's better for this first episode, instead of him just randomly playing like a shitty game. You know, like an LJN game or Jekyll and Hyde, which we'll get to those ones shortly, but it would have been easy to put those as the first episode. And you could tell how early this video was, with it not really being much of a film like James's other projects at the time. It was meant to be more experimental, a one-off. The whole joke being that the nerd was getting overly angry over something so non-consequential as an old NES game.
Would you guess that you're supposed to pass through this wall? How? You have to kneel down by it for like 10 seconds. You need to have a red crystal selected and be kneeling down and wait a little while before this magic tornado comes and takes you to the next part of the game.
Little did James know just how far this was going to go. With how this video is structured though, you'd think he had planned this from the start, but in reality, it was a very successful fluke that grew into something much larger. And of course now, the very idea of reviewing an old game is anything but comical. You could go long ways with it by being serious or intentionally funny, talking about your personal experience of the game, its impact, how it holds up, so on and so forth. Because of this, I'm glad to say that this video still holds up after all these decades later, yeah. Decades. It's weird to think that this series is actually older than YouTube. By 1 year, but still. Because of James' thought process when making it, I was worried that this video would just be a review that didn't really take itself seriously. But like I said, the way it's written makes it feel like James planned it from the start. The video still holds up with it being just a generally funny video riffing on the game and how shitty it is, while also providing some hilarious, sarcastic comedy from the nerd. It truly feels like an actual pitch pilot laying down the groundwork for the series, and what to expect from the nerd as a character.
I mean, what the hell is the point of going through the castle if there's nobody to fight? Did the game designers just like run out of time or something? So then you get up to Dracula and guess what? He doesn't look anything like Dracula. Instead he looks like a Grim Reaper and he throws sickles. I mean, did the people who made this game even know what Dracula is? He's a fucking vampire.
It has a little bit of everything you expect from a standard episode. The nerd's hilarious swears, mocking the game's mechanics, amongst other aspects. We even have a moment where he mocks the complicated password system, something he frequently complains about later in the show. I also appreciate how despite being a comedy series, the nerd is willing to be objective, calm down, and point out how the game could have been better. He takes a moment to rationally explain his thoughts, and slowly but surely building up his anger, gradually becoming more annoyed. But with this being the pilot, he doesn't necessarily get angry per se. At least not too angry to the point where he has like genuine rage. But the video is still memorable for its funny moments and the more chilled out atmosphere compared to other episodes. And that's what I like about this one. The nerd feels very genuine here, but still does a good job being somewhat exaggerated with his critique. It's an episode that's always worth rewatching for fans of the show, even if it's different from most of the others. But with this video doing very well, and Mike encouraging James to revisit this idea of a sequel, it only allowed the series to keep on growing, and as we're about to see, how the series evolves from here. But all in all, it's a great pilot that I always enjoy rewatching, even if it can be pretty rough around the edges at times. Still though, a pretty great episode and a great legacy for the series as a whole, and for YouTube as a whole. Well, here we go. When James had the idea of making the nerd into an on-screen character, he had to come up with a unique-looking persona, and the result was a comedic caricature of the typical angry nerd type character. It's not too funny now that we know this character, but for the time, I think this helped add a lot to the joke that James was going with.
This game is fucking horrible! It's fucking horrible! It makes no fucking sense. It's It's like, what were they thinking? Like, I seriously can't believe how bad that fucking game is.
And this is probably one of the biggest episodes of the entire series. For the longest time, I actually thought it was the first, but before I found out about Simon's Quest. The nerd covers the horrifyingly awful video game, one that he could barely stand to say the name of, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is yet another idea that practically writes itself, the nerd playing a game that's so unbelievably bad that it literally scarred him for life. Scars so permanent that he could barely stand to play it.
You'd rather superglue your asshole shut than play that game. You'd rather drown in gasoline. You'd rather... You know, the thing is... You think I'm joking, like I'm trying to be funny or something. You know, the fact that that game exists is a horrible abomination of mankind.
It seems that Jekyll and Hyde of itself is a staple of Cinemassacre, and many people associate the story of Jekyll and Hyde with the NES game. In this episode, we see more of the nerd's brand of comedy, with him ranting about the horrors of the game, the worst game he's ever played, and drowning his sorrows in Rolling Rock. These two episodes are instant classics, and watching them back to back is really interesting, since they introduce many staples of the series as a whole. Everything from the Rolling Rock, the shit jokes, and the nerd's extreme reactions to these games that he played frustratingly as a kid. I love seeing the nerd go all in and tear the game apart in such a dramatic way. It feels much more in line with what James was going for with the previous episode.
You walk around punching people and throwing shit, and then for no reason you just die. Lightning will strike like real spontaneous, then you're dead. And then the game's over. What the fuck is that shit?
The episode in general is just really great with this hilarious rant. It's just endlessly rewatchable. It's going above the previous for reasons that I think are pretty obvious. The only real problem is that there really isn't much footage of the game itself, but considering the quality of Jekyll and Hyde, I guess you only really need to watch a little bit of footage to really get the point across. At least the point that the nerd is trying to go for. He does the same thing in the re-review initially. And in the end, this is just another great one, and a generally funny YouTube classic that's worth watching at least once.
I am dead fucking serious. Dead fucking serious.
In the first episode, we never saw the nerd, just heard him rant about the game and review it. The second episode was mostly about the nerd on camera, with him ranting about how bad the game was, and mostly just serving as an over-the-top skit about how this game scarred him for life. But this episode goes all in with the best of both worlds, as we get the nerd doing a short but hilarious review of the Karate Kid on NES, complete with an amazing skit at the beginning, illustrating the nerd's incredible rage.
Fuck.
Die!
You try to help me now, man?
His angry nature is in complete display here. After experimenting with the first two episodes, we finally got a good idea of what a true nerd episode is like. Despite being shorter than the previous, only clocking in at around 4 minutes, it manages to be even better than the other two on so many levels.
Well, let me be honest with you about this one. Oh boy, I hate this game. I mean, it makes me want to kill myself.
Simply for the fact that, again, it is a more traditional nerd review. It's all about one thing that the series nails at: simplicity. The simple idea of the nerd losing his cool and tearing apart the game, both critically and literally. This one also had quite a few marks and staples of the series as well. Of course, this is the first time we get to see the nerd play an LJN game. Yeah, I actually wasn't expecting that so soon. I kept thinking Back to the Future or Friday the 13th were the first LJN games. But with this being pretty early on in the series, he doesn't draw too much attention to it just yet. Which is another smart move in my opinion. I think that's better than the alternative of having the nerd already know about the company and calling them his mortal enemy from the start. The company is referred to as such later on, so it's cool seeing him not draw attention to it initially. It allows him to have more build-up with the nerd catching on to the pattern gradually. The pattern being that many of the shitty games he reviews were made by the same company. That's not even mentioning just how many funny moments there are in here. Again, the nerd really just sells his rage in the opening skit, his rant at the beginning and end, as well as everything in between the episode, with him picking apart every detail of the game and just ranting about it. It really is classic YouTube for sure. I know it's going to sound a bit repetitive of me saying that for most of these, but it really is true. Everybody remembers this format of people just putting on a game for a bit, talking about how shitty it is, and rambling about it while delivering some pretty funny jokes. And the nerd really was the pioneer in all of this. They just scream classic YouTube and are still pretty entertaining to watch to this day. They held up pretty well. The next few are going to expand on this idea, and as you're going to soon see, the quality will improve more and more. But for now, this one is going at the top of the list. Truly another great episode. Another short episode, this one mostly being review-based, like the Castlevania one, with very little live-action shots. But that's not a bad thing, though. It's going back to what I was saying about these classic YouTube reviews, where it's just someone rambling about a game for a little bit and just delivering some pretty well-timed jokes. This one shows off a lot of the good comedic timing with James's delivery, creative cursing, and a wild outburst. Did you know, however, that there was actually a deleted scene in this episode that featured more live-action footage? Basically, it was just a traditional end rant about the nerd reflecting on all the shitty aspects of the game in an epic, angry rant. However, an error in the audio equipment caused the entire angry rant to be muted. It's weird to think that if this error hadn't occurred, this would have marked the first true angry rant in the show. This would have been a turning point for the show as opposed to the rant at the end of the next episode, which we'll get to shortly. The first true angry rant. Instead, we got an episode that feels like a mix between Simon's Quest and Karate Kid. Episodes like this are a necessity in order to show us how far the nerd will go in order to dissect the horrible, shitty aspects of these games, and much like the Simon's Quest episode, deliver it with a ton of crude humor and swearing. It may not be high art, but episodes like this exemplify what makes the show great. It's a hilarious, unfiltered look into the shitty aspects of retro gaming, but the nerd plays things straight and keeps his points real in his own crude, lowbrow way. The nerd was always meant to be a voice for the audience, who was willing to look at beloved games from childhood and point out how shitty they truly were once you remove the nostalgia goggles. His snide remarks and rage-fueled rants really showcase this. Although you could really tell in these early episodes that James was still finding his footing in terms of the nerd's anger. I noticed that in these early episodes, the nerd's anger could come off as more deranged.
I hope you're proud of yourself.
Yeah, well, I hope you're proud of yourself, and you know what I mean, you fucking whore.
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
Yeah, well, wait till I draw your suicide note in your own blood, you bunny fucking bitch. I'm coming over, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill your whole motherfucking family.
I mean, it's still very funny, but kind of jarring hearing the nerd talking in a more psychotic manner. Still, though, it's a very hilarious episode, though it's going at the bottom of the list for now, but I want to make it clear early on, that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it wasn't as good as some of the other ones. But even when you remove that bar, you have a short, simple, and funny episode that shows the nerd at its most basic core, opposed to our next episode, which, as you're going to soon see, pushes the nerd to his limits.
Alright, the game sucks, end the story. I want to nail Roger Rabbit to the fucking cross.
Ninja Turtle episode really exemplifies what I was talking about with the last segment. This one shows the nerd deciding to shit on a beloved childhood classic that he and many other kids played over the years, holding it near and dear to their hearts, and the nerd deconstructing it down to its shitty mechanics, ridiculous difficulty, and just generally bad game design.
He may be like, come on, it's the first of its kind, be easy on it, but no, it sucks. It sucks ass from a straw. Oh, you son of a fuck. And you know what pisses me off? They're turtles, for fuck's sakes. They can't even swim?
The kind of thing that shows off how nerdy our main character could be with this sort of thing, but also showing how unfiltered he could be with his irreverent takes on these games, tearing them a new one. The nerd is the type of character who won't take these things sitting down, the kind of guy who won't take shit from anyone and will tell it how it is.
So here's a pop quiz. Who are the target audience for this game? Kids. Kids who were fans of Ninja Turtles. Now, you think they would have actually have put more Ninja Turtle characters in the game? Like Baxter Stockman, the Rat King, Krang. I mean, it's not like Krang was like a minor character that came in the 5th season of the show. Krang was right there from the beginning. So, like, there was no excuse. There was no excuse not to have him there.
For as much as people loved the Ninja Turtles game as a kid, he's ready to show that your time with this game wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. And that's what the nerd is really all about. That and getting revenge. Retaliation against the shitty games that tormented you from childhood. The pent-up rage you felt over the baffling design of the game. The nerd's boiling anger all culminated to a moment that is not only hilarious, but also so brilliantly written to the point where I could say, it's one of the greatest displays of comedy I've ever personally seen. And I'm gonna play it all for you in full right now.
Cowabunga. Cow, a fucking piece of dog shit. This game is diarrhea coming out of my dick. This game is as appealing as a fucking ooze-infested, dirty fucking sewer rat shit. I've had more fun playing with dog turds. Shredders my ass and splinters my balls. This game is an inside-out asshole regurgitating putrid anal fecal matter. I'd rather fucking yank all the hairs out of my scrotum. I'd rather drink diarrhea vomited out of a buffalo's anus. It sucking fucks, it fucking sucks, it fucking blows, it's a piece of shit. And I don't like it.
This moment, this legendary rant over something that seems so minuscule, led to something so gargantuan. For me, it was the moment that solidified the nerd as a true piece of comedic genius. That may sound a bit dramatic, I'm aware, and sure, it may not be the most highbrow, thought-provoking piece of comedy ever written, but it was that irreverent energy and the charm that rubs off, and it's impossible to deny. That alone cements this episode at the top of the list. It's just so hilarious, and I know the way I'm describing it is kind of over-aggrandizing, but it really is hard to put into words just how truly revolutionary this sort of thing was for the web. James and Mike created not only a hilarious character and a hilarious series, but they also created a piece of internet history, something that many viewers, young and old, were able to latch onto. Something that made all of us laugh so hard at the pure, unfiltered gold of the series. Again, it may be lowbrow, but it's anything but unmemorable. You can't deny the pure effort of this material that was given to us. Consider this part my personal thanks to James and Mike, two of my biggest personal inspirations in entertainment. All in all, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is one of the funniest episodes of the show, and one of the funniest displays of comedy in general. I will never get sick of rewatching this one any chance I get, and will never get tired of the hilarious rant at the end. The pure angry video game nerd at its finest. Needless to say, this one is going at the top of the list. The first season held up even better than I thought. Okay, another LJN game. This time we have Back to the Future. In this episode, we see James's love for cinema peek through, as he talks about the absurdly bad Back to the Future games.
I'd rather have a fucking buffalo take a diarrhea dump in my ear than subject them to this horrendous garbage.
I'd rather eat out the rotten asshole of a road-killed skunk than play this game ever again. And I'm dead serious, too.
This is another episode that just feels like pure AVGN, with the nerd expressing his disappointment with the game and how it failed to follow the movie at all, despite coming out years after the film's release. This episode is also well known for the format of the nerd mocking the game while also showing footage from the film, in order to really illustrate his anger towards the product. I gotta be honest, I'm not completely fond of this idea of him just showing footage from a movie. It's not a huge deal, but I didn't think it was as funny as some of the other episodes. It's still pretty okay for what it is, but I just wasn't the biggest fan of this format of AVGN.
Damn.
But once again, we see him getting retaliation for a game that disappointed him as a child. And it's another one that kind of writes itself just because of how bizarre the game is, with it being really nonsensical and having literally nothing to do with the film. And it's funny just seeing the nerd go off of it and just mock how stupid the game really is.
If I just shat into a bag and wrote Back to the Future on it, that would be the same as this awful piece of shit. It brings my piss to a boil.
I gotta be honest, I don't have a whole lot else to say about this one, which I feel may be a bit of a theme as we go along. Sometimes it can be hard to say a lot about a few of these episodes other than me just saying it was funny or classic or entertaining. But that's only because it just has a really good pace behind it. It never feels too slow with the nerd giving running commentary over the game and the clips from the film following suit. Even though I'm not a big fan of this format of him playing clips from the movie during his review, it still works out pretty well because of how he goes about it. And again, his jokes are just really funny here. It still works really well just because of how funny it is, and the nerd's commentary just being really funny to listen to. That's what these older episodes were in essence, just more casual internet rant videos. This really shows off the caricature of the nerd with him having explosive anger, like the most angry of internet commentators, but with a much higher production value. Him playing an exaggerated character based on the frustration that people would feel from playing a game like this. Back to the Future is another good one, but it's going near the bottom so far, right above Roger Rabbit. Again, doesn't mean it's bad, just to be clear, but so far I just like the others more. This whole season has still been pretty good so far, and it's good seeing the episodes slowly but surely continue to evolve.
There's got to be one good thing about this game, and I know what it is. It fits in a toaster.
Speaking of evolving, this next episode is around the time they really started to settle in with the character, continuing to refer to him as the angry Nintendo nerd. This episode is one of the most notable and most important episodes of the series, simply for the opening.
He's gonna take you back to the past to play the shitty games that suck ass. He'd rather have a buffalo take a diarrhea dump in his ear.
That's right, this is the episode where they introduced the legendary theme song, probably the biggest staple of the show so far. It's honestly really nostalgic hearing this classic rendition of the song. The way Kyle Justin sings it almost sounds like a campfire song, with the lack of any additional music besides the guitar itself. I really love how cozy it sounds, just a great simple guitar tune to accompany to the show. This is also technically the first time we get to see another character in the show besides the nerd, that being Kyle Justin, the guitar guy who lives behind the nerd's couch. It's weird to think that the first 7 episodes didn't even have Kyle Justin or his song. That was really cool to see it happen more gradually in these early episodes. As for the video itself, it's actually notable for being one of the most simplistic ones. More so than any of the others that came before it, and even more so than many of the others after it. I think that's mostly because of how, in this one, much like the first episode, the nerd isn't really featured on camera outside of the intro, while all the others either featured him throughout or just little snippets at least. But here, it feels more in line with what I was talking about, with it being a more general rant with him rambling about the game as he plays it. And that isn't a bad thing. Again, that's what the show is at its core. I guess I should preface this by saying that I'm going to be saying this a lot, by the way, but just because there isn't much to say about an episode, it does not mean it's bad by any means. Honestly, I think LS Mark really sussed this out well in his Fairly OddParents ranking.
I feel like Season 2 has got into this sort of rut you expect from a lot of episodic shows, where it's just at a point of being a string of fine ones. Not the best, but still not bad. The kind of thing where while watching it on TV as a kid it's fun, but when viewing them all in a row highlights how forgettable they are. Weird byproduct of every episode of every show ever being at your fingertips now.
Of course, it can be hard to comment on every single episode, because sometimes you don't really know what all to say about it. That might make it sound like it's nothing special or not worth checking out, but that's far from the case. Again, like Mark said, a weird byproduct of binging your favorite show, watching every episode in one big marathon, is that you start to find these episodes that you don't really have a lot to say about. But I mean, that's standard for any show that got aired a lot. In the end, those kinds of episodes are still important to have for any show. If we just focus on the really good ones or the really bad ones, then we'd have less to say for the overall series. In the case of the nerd, it was just fun to watch the show and either see what the nerd had in store for this week's episode, or just checking out random episodes you hadn't seen yet, just having a blast on the nerd's page. And I think My Kids is a good example of this working well, since it's just a simple and funny rant about this random NES game, where he once again shows off all his funny clips against the game, and all-time swears.
Then you go to Birdie's stage, stupid feathered fucking bird bitch. So there's Ronald with his magic bag of hallucinogenic drugs. I always thought that clown was one scary motherfucker.
It's just funny hearing the nerd make jokes at the expense of Ronald and the gang. It always struck me as odd though that the nerd chose this gang, considering it's not even really that shitty. And he makes it clear at the beginning that some people enjoy the game, and doesn't really seem to get too angry at this one. But I guess it doesn't really matter too much, as long as James has something funny to say about it. And here he has a lot of funny jokes. I feel like in any other context, this episode probably wouldn't be seen in such a very high quality now, with the standards of the nerd being much higher. But I actually kind of miss the days where he had a short episode like this, where it's about 7 minutes long or so, and just have him talk about a random game that there's not much to say about, but could still have good material. I mean, since James takes a lot longer with these more high quality episodes, I think it would be interesting to see these types of episodes be revisited in the future. You know, having short episodes like this on games that don't really warrant a long, in-depth episode, just funny little in-between videos. You may call that filler, which isn't incorrect, but again, those episodes can be fun to revisit too, and they're important for the show. As long as they're funny, it's usually worthwhile. Even though McKids is going near the bottom of the list, I still enjoyed it a lot, and I definitely think it's worth watching. It's still an entertaining episode, even if it's not as good as the rest so far.
Guess you just gotta commit suicide. Toasty!
Well, now we have the shortest episode so far. Clocking in at less than 3 minutes, the nerd reviews an anti-drug game from the 90s known as Wally Bear and the No Gang. A product of its time, with the main character being this hip-happening bear wearing sunglasses and looking cool while riding a skateboard, showing all the kids that you don't have to do drugs to look cool. I think most people actually forget the nerd covered this game with it being reviewed so early on. I think more people remember when JonTron covered this game a decade later in his video, where he had a lot of funny material to work off of, from the bad controls, weird characters, and the final level being in a bomb ghetto, ironically enough. I saw his video before James, and I think it kind of set my expectations up a little higher than usual. I think that's partially responsible for why I found this one kinda disappointing the first time I saw it. I know I literally just said that I think a show like this should have more of these short episodes, and I usually do enjoy them. But this one in particular was just too short. I can understand the review being short if there wasn't much for the game to offer, like with Karate Kid, and how that only had 4 levels. So because of that, the video was no longer than a few minutes. But as we saw with JonTron, there was quite a bit of material that this game had to offer. The potential was there for a good nerd episode where he could have gone on a little longer at least, maybe closer to the length of McKids, but we didn't get that either. Not to mention, there are actually 2 versions of the episode. The second version features an additional scene of the nerd calling the old hotline for the Wally Bear character. The original didn't have that, so when you remove the scene, you have an episode that's really short and barely feels like a game review. Like, again, I could understand if he was reviewing something like an old Atari game where there isn't much to say and it's hard to do a whole video on it, but you're really telling me that the nerd only played this game for like 2 minutes, just skipped through most of it? Like, why even cover it to begin with? There are shorter games that he reviewed later on that had longer episodes. There aren't even really that many funny moments in this one, sadly, and that's because of how abrupt it is. Like, because he played so little of the game, he doesn't really make that many jokes about it. Again, I usually like these shorter episodes where he just rambles about it for a bit, but this one ended way too abruptly. It could have been a funny episode about the nerd taking a piss out of this lame 90s mascot who was trying to appeal to kids, but the episode ended before it had a chance to begin. The only part I laughed at was the scene where he made fun of the cartridge, but that's really it. It's going at the bottom of the list.
Fuck that. It's creeping me out. It's like listening to a ghost.
Another unlicensed NES game. This time the nerd plays a bizarre game known as Master Chew and the Drunkard Hugh. But the nerd isn't alone this time.
Hey, come here. No, not there.
Shit pickle.
Hey, tell him.
Shit pickle.
Tell him your name.
Shit pickle.
Yeah, this is Shit Pickle.
Shit pickle.
And
Shit pickle.
Shit Pickle's gonna.
Shit pickle.
That's right, this is the episode that introduced the beloved Shit Pickle character. Originating as a trippy, Adult Swim-esque animated short that James and Mike made, Shit Pickle was a weird, trippy character who seemed to actually work off the nerd pretty well. You could really tell that James was a fan of Aqua Teen just by looking at his design. And despite being a talking pickle with shit on his head, who could only say his name, he actually worked off him pretty well. You know, usually a console like this wouldn't seem worthy of being used for an entire episode, but since it's another short one, it doesn't overstay its welcome.
Pickle, 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 shit, pickle, shit.
You ever play this game Master Chew and the Drunkard Who? Yeah.
The nerd does this thing just reviewing the game and mocking how ridiculous the concept is. And with the game and episode being so short, the pacing is very fast, with the nerd throwing joke after joke after you, even more so than most of the others. From the nerd reading out the game's story, Shit Pickle interjecting every now and then, and the bizarre ending to the game. It's another simple one, and unlike Wally Bear, this one actually feels warranted to be so short without feeling like James skipped over most of the game. It feels shorter since the game didn't have much to offer, but still had a few things to comment on. The inclusion of Shit Pickle makes it much funnier. You could tell they really wrote the episode around his character, using him as a vehicle to throw more jokes and insults at the game's expense.
Shit, pickle, shit, pickle, shit, pickle, shit, pickle.
What are you talking about? The graphics?
Shit, pickle.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Pickle, pickle, pickle.
This one's going above Wally Bear, but under McKids. I'll always consider it an instant classic for the series, simply because of Shit Pickle's appearance. It's pretty cool to think that he was originally a character from a different Cinemassacre project, appearing on this show. As you're gonna see later on, this won't be the last time this happens in the series.
What a piece of shit.
Pickle.
Dude, this whole season was filled with classic episodes. Top Gun is one of the most popular and beloved nerd episodes of all time, and it's not hard to see why. This is one of those infamously hard NES games. Games for the console that are so difficult that many have failed trying to master them. These kinds of games always make for good nerd episodes, as we saw with the TMNT episode, and we're going to see with more later on. Top Gun is a pretty standard flight simulation and combat game. However, the difficulty ramps up when the nerd has to try to land the plane, which seems to be a very impossible task.
Ass! Fuck!
The nerd's rage is played up so well here. You can really feel his frustration with the mission as he desperately tries to master this task. I love the homage to the original Top Gun film with the nerd playing the Kenny Loggins song Danger Zone as he blows shit up before smashing the TV. And I will never get tired of these campier screams the nerd tries to go for in this episode. This is what I was talking about earlier when it comes down to these shorter reviews. The episode is about 7 minutes long, which is just enough time for the nerd to explain the game, why it's so hard, and displaying his rage in a convincing way, all while hitting us with joke after joke. He even has time to review the second Top Gun game, which is pretty cool too. It's another classic nerd episode from beginning to end. There's not really much else I could say here. And, chances are he didn't need me to tell you that, but if you're checking out the series for the first time, this is one that you definitely have to see. It's another one that screams what the show is all about, on top of just being really funny. It's going near the top for sure. Another McKids-style episode, albeit much shorter. This time the nerd sits down to give us his thoughts on one of the worst sequels in the NES library, next to Simon's Quest. That game being the third installment in the Double Dragon trilogy. There's not a whole lot to say about it, other than it's just another general rant about the game that's pretty entertaining. There's enough funny jokes here to keep you entertained, especially the infamous Bimmy clip.
Oh wait, Bimmy and Jimmy? How'd they make a mistake like this? Bimmy isn't even a real name. How did this happen? They didn't even proofread this shitty game before they released it? Bimmy and Jimmy? I'm sorry, I just can't get over that. Bimmy and Jimmy. There's a typo in a Nintendo game, let alone a fucking Double Dragon game, and it's the first screen.
Much like Wally Bear, however, I feel like there was some missed potential here, since I think the nerd could have done a longer episode showing off a little more of the game. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like he cut down a lot of the game's content unlike Wally Bear, so I think it's fine at the length it is. Within that short time frame at least, there's plenty of good jokes here with James mocking the game, its difficulty, and how it failed as the final game in the trilogy. This one's probably going around the middle of the list, just another very funny one, though I feel like this one still could have been a little longer. Maybe the nerd can revisit this one sometime, and, do it proper justice, but I guess only time will tell.
Fuck. What a piece of fucking goddamn shit. Fuck.
We have another big episode here, as this is the first one to show off James' filmmaking chops in a way. James has already had a whole decade's worth of films that show off his evolution and skill as a filmmaker. He wanted to showcase these chops in the Nerd series by having more episodes like this that are more experimental with the content. It's not uncommon now to have skits in your review, for better or worse, but this was yet another first for the web at the time. Instead of just having the nerd review the Friday the 13th game for the NES, he reviews it while also having this skit and plotline throughout the episode, in which Jason is out to get him.
Don't kill me. Kill me.
The opening to this one is so clever and does a great job setting the mood and stakes for the episode. The nerd starts out by complimenting the game despite the many flaws here at present that would piss him off normally. You're not really sure why he's doing this until he starts to look behind him to see if he's in the clear so he can express his true thoughts on the game.
Like puke up a donkey's ass! What a shitload of motherfucking bullfuck! I mean, I'd rather eat snot and diarrhea vomited out of a buffalo's dick, and if you thought I was serious about this game...
Then Jason comes out, and you can immediately put the pieces together. The nerd has to review Jason's game positively, or else he's gonna die. The conflict here just works so well for the series, with the nerd being forced to bottle up his rage he has towards the game in order to save his own skin. It feels like a more literal take on the show's concept. Again, the nerd wants to serve as a voice for the audience and unleash the pent-up rage people felt towards these games after all these years. Only this time, he's forced to pent up his rage at the hands of this villain. This leads to the hilarious ending where the nerd gets progressively angrier with his rant at the end, thus leading to him attacking Jason and shooting him.
I'd rather play Doom on Atari. I'd rather play Halo on a Tiger Electronic wrist game. I'd rather drown in diarrhea. I'd rather fucking eat my fucking balls off and puke them up my fucking ass. I'd rather piss a cactus out of my dick. The music is fucking worse than life itself, and I turn the volume down except for the fact that I have to hear the Jason alarm. It's all just a test of patience, and it can kiss my fucking asshole.
It's just hilarious to see. It's one of the funniest nerd rants ever, and that's what makes the best nerd rants. Whenever he pents up his anger until the very end and just lets it all out. As a fan of the Friday the 13th series, I gotta give him a lot of credit for nailing the style of these films. The episode marks the first time Mike Matei played a character on the show, another staple that you're gonna see more of as we go down the line. Here he plays the role of Jason Voorhees and does a great job playing this slasher villain role, even with the more amateurish production value, but that's what adds a charm to it and makes it much more commendable. James is also just hilarious in this one, giving a great performance by showing the fear and anxiety of the situation while also balancing it with the comedic tone of the story. His back and forth with Jason is genuinely really funny. The rage is great and on point. I love the nerd's sarcastic commentary towards the game being good. This is the first episode of the show to really feel like a mini-movie in a way. A great compromise for fans of the show that also allows James to do what he wants to do as a film director. This is yet another episode that just screams AVGN. It's going very close to the top. Continuing with the horror movie theme, we have the second of the two LJN horror movie games. The nerd gets trapped in a nightmare at the hands of Freddy Krueger, where he's forced to play the shitty Nightmare on Elm Street video game by LJN.
They should have just called the game Boo! Haunted House, which is probably what they originally had in mind until they thought, no wait, make it about Freddy. We already ruined Friday the 13th, now let's do the same thing to Nightmare on Elm Street. And that's right, it's by the same company. We're not going to say who it is, but it stands for Laughin' Jokin' Numbnuts.
It's weird to think that the nerd caught on to this whole LJN thing so early in the show. I always assumed that he didn't catch on to it until like Season 2, not Season 1. I guess it makes sense though, since this is like the 5th LJN game that he's covered so far. This time, Freddy is actually played by James instead of Mike. And since the nerd is meant to be an extension of James in a way, it's interesting to see him playing another character on the show. I mean, he's done that plenty of times in his other films and series, but he always does a pretty good job at it, and this is no exception. I really love this more sadistic voice he does for Freddy, really nailing his cadence and tone. Freddy always had that tone of being the kind of guy who always mocked his victims and took great pleasure in doing so. It's what made him such an iconic character in fiction. James does a fantastic job at mimicking him while also adding his own spin on this character. It's funny hearing Freddy mock the nerd and sort of deconstruct the nerd's character as well as his mission. How his mission to warn people from playing shitty games is what makes him his own worst enemy. The fact that he tortures himself by playing these games. The twist that Freddy is literally a nightmarish version of the nerd was a really great twist that tied everything all together. The ending is also very funny with the nerd using the power glove to combat against Freddy's glove, which perfectly segues into the next episode. Nightmare on Elm Street is funny, well shot, and has tons of great moments, like when the nerd clones himself and the scene where he shits on the game.
Bombs away! Oh, fuck you, diarrhea fiend!
But I also mainly love how it sets up the idea of the nerd being this somewhat, insane person, choosing to torture himself, surround himself with shit, and force himself to play these awful games. That's the kind of character development that you wouldn't expect to see in a show like this, and it won't be the last time that it happens in the show. You might say that it's a bit too serious for a comedy show like this, but I don't know, I always found it kind of interesting, and as you're going to soon see, they do explore this a little more later on. This one's going above Friday the 13th. This season is just getting better and better. Okay, the first episode to focus on something that isn't strictly a game. The nerd instead decides to tackle one of gaming's biggest scams, the Power Glove for the NES.
It's an interesting experiment in gaming technology. But too bad they were just fucking jerking off. Like, why does it suck so bad? Well, I have one fucking complaint about this glove. It doesn't work. Now, what's the most important aspect about any game? Well, being able to fucking play it.
Honestly, the concept alone for this one just writes itself. The nerd is instantly pissed off at the memories the Power Glove brings back with just how shitty it is. This shitty, broken peripheral that doesn't work and was 100% elevated by the commercials that made it look like more than it actually was. The episode is really funny with it just being less of a review and more like a series of gags and rants directed at the glove. The nerd tries out various games with the Power Glove while attempting to see if any of them are even playable with it. This one really shows off how funny the nerd's commentary can be. Here we see him making all kinds of funny, derogatory remarks towards the Power Glove. I really don't have much to say about this one, it just has a lot of funny, quotable moments. I rewatched this one so many times and can recite the various jokes and swears verbatim.
Trying to pop the bubbles, good luck. Sucks monkey fuck. Sucks monkey fuck. We got this, man. We got this by the ass. Wow. Playing Top Gun with the Power Glove. It's like puking on a pile of shit.
This one is definitely a must-watch for any fans of the show. Again, it just kind of writes itself. The comedy in this one is just perfect. It's going right under the last. It's just one of the funniest ones yet.
Now you're playing with power. Now you're playing with fucking shit. You're better off fucking shit than fucking with this fucked up shit. Fuck this shit. You don't know shit about how fucking shitty this fucking shit is. It's so bad it sucks. It's so fucking suck it fucks. And I can't take it anymore.
Here we have another fairly standard episode that still sticks out for one reason. In this episode, the nerd is reviewing a Master System game. You see, this episode is notable for being the very first one to mark the name change from the Angry Nintendo Nerd to the Angry Video Game Nerd. Again, it's cool to see the show slowly grow more and more into the series we all know and love, even by marking the name change. This episode is also one of the first episodes to have two versions of it. You see, some episodes of the show have clips from the movie that the game is based on, in this case Rocky, where they had to be re-edited for the YouTube and DVD release. This caused a bit of a problem for this specific episode, where some of the jokes here were written around the movie clips and had to be cut out entirely.
Is there any way to control this? Like, how does it work? I want to know.
You don't want to know.
Yeah, I want to know.
You want to know?
Yeah, I want to fucking know.
If you've seen the original, it is somewhat apparent while watching this episode. Without the clips, the review does feel kinda empty, but it's not too obvious, and there's tons of other jokes without the movie clips to still make it memorable. I personally didn't even know about the second version until years later, but rewatching it, it was really funny.
Well, this is boring, don't you think? Fuck. Cock a fucking doodle ass shit sucking ball fuck. This is fucking boring.
Again, the remake is still pretty good for what it is, but you really are better off watching the original. It's a more complete package. I have a lot of appreciation for this one simply for being the first official Angry Video Game Nerd episode. There's not a whole lot to say, it's just kind of another funny one with him just making a lot of good jokes about the game and having some pretty funny references and homages to the Rocky films. But let's see where the season concludes with our next and final episode. Well, here we are at the season finale. We have a Christmas episode here, in which the nerd reviews a series of games by a company called Wisdom Tree. This company made various games that were based on Bible stories, and I put that in quotation marks because, in reality, these games were just a bunch of shitty shovelware games that often ripped off assets from other games like Wolfenstein or Zelda.
The question is, would you want to? Well, actually, yeah, you would. What other first-person shooter game do you get to play as Noah? Now, does it look like Wolfenstein 3D? Yes. In fact, it is Wolfenstein 3D. It doesn't even count as a ripoff. It's the same fucking game, but with Noah.
This is another episode where the jokes kind of just write themselves. The nerd has all these funny, exaggerated reactions throughout to all these bizarre Bible games, and there's a good amount of variety with each game in the episode. It also marks the first time the nerd played a Super Nintendo game through Super Noah's Ark 3D. His reaction to the game cartridge, the ridiculous gameplay, the idea of these wholesome Bible games ripping off violent games like Wolfenstein, and just the idea of a Christian finding out about one of these games is just hilarious.
So let's play another Bible game. It's the Book of Genesis on Sega Genesis, and the soundtrack is Genesis.
James once again sells it very well here. I also love the Christmas intro for this episode and the crude animation for Kyle Justin as a snowman. That was a nice touch, and the lyrics for the Christmas song were pretty good. It's also cool seeing the nerd do a weird game episode this early on. There's quite a few of these in the show's later seasons, so you wouldn't have expected one as early as Season 1. This is one of the funniest episodes of the season so far, both because of the games and the nerd's commentary on them. It's yet another episode that just screams classic YouTube and what these kinds of game reviews were like back then. It's another fantastic episode and a great one to end the season on. And with that, we have finished the first season of AVGN. All in all, not a bad start for this ranking series. A lot of these videos still hold up pretty well, even if they aren't exactly the most well prepared. But as time goes on and the season continues, every episode just got better and better. Again, it's pretty understandable that some of these episodes were kind of rough around the edges since this was just the first season, and James was still finding his footing. But for the most part, just about all of these still hold up, and you can still have a pretty fun time watching all of them. Of course, we still got a long, long way to go, but I'm really glad that I was able to finally start off this ranking series. So, thank you guys very much for watching, and be sure to tune in next time for Season 2 of the AVGN series. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.